Hey everybody, welcome back to the Wolf Pit with another episode of What Are We Eating? Today we're doing a frozen macaroni and cheese throwdown, starting with the least expensive to the most expensive. Starting with the 8-ounce frozen Melinas macaroni and cheese that's made with real cheese and costs $1.18. Out of 99 reviews, the Melinas macaroni and cheese got 3.5 stars out of 5. The most helpful positive review gave it 5 stars and said it was ASD safe. If you're wondering what ASD stands for like I was, it stands for Autism Spectrum Disorder. I had no idea about this, so I learned something today, and hopefully you, the people, did as well. The most helpful negative review gave it 1 star and said there's literally a perfect square cut in the bottom of this dinner. What does that mean? And how is it helpful? Here's the list of ingredients. The serving size is the whole container, which has 260 calories, 12 grams of total fat, 4 grams of saturated fat, no trans fat, 15 milligrams of cholesterol, 730 milligrams of sodium, 31 grams of carbohydrates, 2 grams of fiber, 2 grams of sugars, and 7 grams of protein. Here's our frozen Melinas macaroni and cheese right out of the freezer. And now we're going to microwave it according to the directions on the box. Now here's our Melinas macaroni and cheese after microwaving on high for 4.5 minutes and resting for 2 minutes. So we gave it a good mix to get all the cheese and the macaroni incorporated. Unfortunately, it looks just like Kraft macaroni and cheese, which I loathe. So we scooped up a spoonful and into the old pie hole and down the gullet it went. And this Melinas macaroni and cheese tastes like it cost $1.18. It was awful. The noodles were undercooked and it tasted like plastic. The flavor was very reminiscent of Kraft macaroni and cheese, except this one had the added plastic flavor. Instead of buying the Melinas macaroni and cheese, you'd be better off buying a box of elbow macaroni, cooking to al dente, and adding a little bit of butter and salt and pepper. Because even at $1.18, it's overpriced for the quality and the amount of food you get, which is why it gets a 2 out of 10. We have Marie Callender's 13-ounce macaroni and cheese bowl that costs $2.96, which is pasta smothered in a smooth and creamy Vermont white cheese sauce. Marie Callender's macaroni and cheese got 3.4 stars out of 5. The most helpful positive review gave it 5 stars and said it was the best mac and cheese ever. The most helpful negative review said it was disappointing and only gave it 2 stars out of 5. Here's the list of premium ingredients. The serving size is the whole container, which has 470 calories, 16 grams of total fat, 8 grams of saturated fat, a half a gram of trans fat, 40 milligrams of cholesterol, 1,140 milligrams of sodium, 60 grams of carbohydrates, 3 grams of fiber, 4 grams of sugars, and 20 grams of protein. Here's our Marie Callender's macaroni and cheese right out of the freezer and right out of the box. Now we're going to cook it according to the directions on the box. Now here's our Marie Callender's macaroni and cheese after microwaving on high for 6.5 minutes. And this is one time that the manufacturer did not catfish the consumer. This macaroni and cheese with the breadcrumbs on top looked just like the picture, well, almost just like the picture on the box. Had I put it underneath a broiler to brown the breadcrumbs, it would have looked just like the picture on the box. So kudos to Marie Callender's. So we started to give it a good mix. Initially it was really creamy, but once we mixed in the breadcrumbs, it almost thickened up too much. And some of the noodles started to rip apart and turn to mush, which means they were overcooked. So we scooped up a spoonful and into the old pie hole and down the gullet it went. And just as I thought as I was mixing, some of the noodles are way overcooked and mushy. But the macaroni and cheese was nice and creamy and cheesy, but for some reason lacks flavor. This is very disappointing for a Marie Callender's meal, which is why it gets a 4 out of 10. Now let's try the 10-ounce Great Value macaroni and cheese that consists of freshly made pasta in a real cheddar cheese sauce that costs $2.97. Out of 8 reviews, the Great Value macaroni and cheese received 1.9 stars out of 5. The most helpful positive review gave it 5 stars and said it was fantastic. The most helpful negative review gave it 1 star and said it almost caused a fire in their oven. I really dislike reviews like this because it's most likely operator error and not the product's fault. Here's the list of ingredients. The serving size is the whole container, which has 460 calories, 19 grams of total fat, 6 grams of saturated fat, no trans fat, 30 milligrams of cholesterol, 1,070 milligrams of sodium, 56 grams of carbohydrates, 3 grams of fiber, 5 grams of sugars, and 17 grams of protein. Here's a Great Value macaroni and cheese right out of the freezer and right out of the box. And now we're going to cook it in the microwave according to the directions on the box. After microwaving on high for a total of 5 minutes, our Great Value macaroni and cheese is ready. And this macaroni and cheese is also very reminiscent of boxed Kraft macaroni and cheese. So we scooped up a spoonful and into the old pie hole and down the gullet it went. If you like well-cooked pasta and somewhat creamy, plasticky, powdered cheese flavor, you're going to love this macaroni and cheese. If you have a decent palate for flavor, you're not going to like this macaroni and cheese. Unfortunately, the Melinas macaroni and cheese was better than the Great Value macaroni and cheese, which is why it gets a 1 out of 10. Now we're going to try the 12-ounce box of Stouffer's macaroni and cheese, which is freshly made pasta in a real cheddar cheese sauce that costs $2.97. Out of 2,117 reviews, the Stouffer's macaroni and cheese received 3.9 stars out of 5. The most helpful positive review gave it 5 stars and said it's always a delicious macaroni and cheese meal. The most helpful negative review said it's soupy mac and cheese. Here's a list of ingredients. Now Stouffer says there's 2 6-ounce servings per container, so with all the other macaroni and cheese meals being of similar sizes and being 1 serving, we're going to treat the Stouffer's macaroni and cheese as 1 serving as well. So the whole container has 500 calories, 24 grams of total fat, 10 grams of saturated fat, a half a gram of trans fat, 40 milligrams of cholesterol, 1,200 milligrams of sodium, 51 grams of carbohydrates, 2 grams of fiber, 5 grams of sugars, and 21 grams of protein. Here's our Stouffer's macaroni and cheese right out of the freezer and right out of the box. And now we're going to cook it according to the directions on the box. Here's our Stouffer's macaroni and cheese after microwaving on high for a total of 6 minutes. Right off the bat, this looks so much better and creamier and cheesier than all the other previous macaroni and cheeses. So after giving it a mix, we scooped up a big spoonful, shoved it into the old pie hole, and down the gullet it went. And it was just like Stouffer's macaroni and cheese is, consistently good. The pasta was cooked perfectly. The cheese sauce, well, although it's processed cheese sauce just like all the other ones, it's still really good. It's creamy and it's really cheesy and it's salty, but not overly salty. So it gets a 7 out of 10. Now let's go over the 10-ounce box of original cheddar flavor Kraft mac and cheese that costs $2.99. Out of 210 reviews, the Kraft Original Cheddar got a score of 4.2 out of 5. And the most helpful positive review and the most helpful negative review couldn't be any more opposite. One says yummy, the other says vomit. So as always, we'll have to judge it for ourselves. Here's the list of ingredients. The serving size is the whole package, which has 630 calories, 30 grams of total fat, 16 grams of saturated fat, 1 gram of trans fat, 80 milligrams of cholesterol, 1,140 milligrams of sodium, 62 grams of carbohydrates, 3 grams of fiber, 4 grams of sugars, and 27 grams of protein. Here's our original cheddar right out of the freezer and right out of the box. And now we vent the film and microwave on high for 3 minutes, and then after 3 minutes, we give it a stir and microwave for another 3 minutes. After microwaving for a total of 6 minutes, our original cheddar mac and cheese is ready. Right off the bat, regardless of what it tastes like, it looks 110% better than the box Kraft macaroni and cheese. As we mixed it, it was certainly very creamy and very cheesy, so we scooped up a big old spoonful and then into the old pie hole and down the gullet it went. And it was certainly very creamy and very cheesy, actually creamier and cheesier than Stouffer's, but I'd even say the flavor's better than Stouffer's. And that's a pretty good compliment if you ask me. I'm definitely not a mac and cheese aficionado or even a huge fan of macaroni and cheese. I think macaroni and cheese is okay, but I can live with or without it. And if I did have a hankering for macaroni and cheese, which I rarely do, I would certainly buy the frozen Kraft Mac and Cheese Deluxe Original Cheddar flavor again. Which is why I'm giving it a score of 8 out of 10. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you soon.